What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. We're only a month into the season, and the Browns have already made a quarterback switch up. Joe Flacco is getting sent to the bench, and Dillon Gabriel will make his first official start going up against the Minnesota Vikings across the pond. And this is a huge moment for Dillon Gabriel. It's not very often that you see day two draft picks getting the starting nod this early into the season. But the Browns have a lot of confidence in Dillon Gabriel, and they're really high on him. But Dillon Gabriel starting isn't the story. Really weird, isn't it? The story is Shedeur Sanders' reaction to Dillon Gabriel starting over him. And there are multiple angles to this situation that we're going to dive into, because unlike the rest of the media, we're not just going to talk about Shedeur Sanders not starting, the politicking that's been going on. Was his reaction warranted? Was it even the right reaction to have? And Dillon Gabriel, just how good is he? And I want to address the question nobody has dared to ask about Dillon Gabriel. What if he's good? What does that mean for Shedeur Sanders if he's good? And then we'll dive into the drama between A.J. Brown, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the unraveling of both the Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. If you live, eat, breathe, and sleep football, why haven't you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications yet, man? If you live, eat, breathe, and sleep football, JT Sports is the place to be. We're talking NFL, college football, 24/7, 365 days throughout the year. Go ahead, check us out on Apple and Spotify. Links are down in the pinned comment and description down below. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. Greatly appreciate it. Give us some feedback in your review. Ask us a question. We will greatly be more than appreciative to answer that thing on a future episode. And let's dive into it. Shedeur Sanders not starting over Dillon Gabriel is all that everybody is talking about when it comes to the Cleveland Browns right now. Nobody's paying attention to Dillon Gabriel, the guy that the Browns drafted ahead of Shedeur Sanders. The same person that has been QB2 on the depth chart since both of these guys arrived in Cleveland. But yet, everybody wants to know how Shedeur Sanders feels about the situation. Does he feel slighted? What was his reaction? Well, you know what they say. Sometimes the best reaction is no reaction at all. And Shedeur Sanders pulled off his best imitation of Mr. Mime. He decided that actions are going to speak louder than words. I'm going to show you better than I can tell you about how I feel about Dillon Gabriel starting over me. And apparently, he decided to take the Mr. Mime approach to troll Rex Ryan a little bit. Now, my whole thing is Shedeur Sanders shouldn't be concerned about the opinion of Rex Ryan. You shouldn't worry about what somebody has to think about you if you wouldn't take advice from them. Rex Ryan is working at ESPN and not on the sidelines as a head coach anymore for a reason. So his opinion shouldn't be anything that Shedeur Sanders should really take seriously, because Rex Ryan doesn't understand Shedeur Sanders' situation. He doesn't know the work that Shedeur is putting in, and he isn't able to observe Shedeur Sanders on a day-to-day basis. So his opinion shouldn't matter. But Shedeur's reaction to Dillon Gabriel starting over him is the exact reason why he fell to the 5th round of the draft. There's this misconception that just because Shedeur was a 1st-round pick and every mock draft leading up to the draft, that's how every team in the NFL felt about him. There's a disconnect between how the media views Shedeur and how the NFL actually views Shedeur Sanders. And that right now is as a backup quarterback. Shedeur Sanders had an opportunity to be the starting quarterback right now for the Baltimore Ravens, but he didn't have the hindsight to see that one man's misfortune, one injury can be the opportunity to showcase to the rest of the NFL what they got wrong about you and why they should give you a second look to possibly be their starting quarterback next year. You see, it's not about Shedeur Sanders starting for a few games as a fill-in for Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson coming back and Shedeur is regulated to being a franchise-long backup. No. What Shedeur being on the Ravens would have been is an opportunity that he hasn't received with the Cleveland Browns that he may not ever receive. And you see, Shedeur Sanders fans love him so much because he's anti-authority. He doesn't conform to the NFL. He's going to do it his way. He's going to be himself, just like his pops. But you see, the difference between Shedeur Sanders and Deion was that people were willing to tolerate Deion being anti-authority because he was a generational athlete. The dude played in a Super Bowl and a World Series. Shedeur Sanders is nowhere near the athlete that Deion Sanders was. And certain teams or certain people, depending on how talented you are willing to put up with certain personality traits that most teams probably wouldn't want to tolerate. But if you're a good player, teams are willing to sweep a lot underneath the rug for you. Prime example, Antonio Brown. Shedeur Sanders, during the draft process, I do believe that there were some interviews that turned teams off. If he turned down the Baltimore Ravens and said that he didn't want to be Lamar Jackson's backup, then he definitely had a few interviews that he bombed trying to control the destination that he landed with. And the NFL felt offended by that. Because the NFL said, how dare you, somebody that hasn't taken a single step in our league, feel like you have the authority to tell us where you should go, who should draft you. And a lot of you guys may feel like that's a problem. Shedeur Sanders should have the ability to control his career. Eli did it. Why can't he? Is it because he's white and Shedeur Sanders is black? No. It's because Eli was viewed in a higher regard by NFL executives than Shedeur Sanders. The same reason why Cam Ward went first overall and why Jackson Dart got drafted late in the first round by the New York Giants. Now, we don't know until the next 3-4 years how this is going to play out in terms of this draft class. But right now, there are two quarterbacks, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, taking ahead of Shedeur Sanders that have been better. Cam Ward has struggled, but that's more so due to the awful situation that he's in. You see, you can't be anti-authority and then get mad when you aren't getting the opportunities that you feel that you're entitled to. Shedeur Sanders, all he had to do in his reaction to Dillon Gabriel starting over him is give the political correct answer. And that is, I'm still going to compete for an eventual opportunity to start, but I'm happy for Dillon Gabriel. I wish him the best. And that's just how the business goes. But instead, he has to try to troll, be Mr. Mine. And this is the exact reason why he fell where he did in the draft. And none of the Shedeur Sanders fans want to admit it. And I love Shedeur Sanders. I made plenty of videos on here reinforcing my belief in Shedeur Sanders' ability to play the quarterback position in the NFL at the highest of levels. But nobody wants to hold Shedeur Sanders accountable for certain things that he needs to improve. Everybody just has this misconception that Shedeur Sanders is this already tailor-made quarterback when he was unable to beat out a sub-6-foot quarterback that has a weak arm. If Shedeur Sanders was as good as what everybody thought he was, if he was as good as what all of those mock drafts had him slated to go, he'll be starting over Dillon Gabriel right now. But this is not the final chapter in Shedeur Sanders' story. There are more pages to be written. There are more pages to be filled when it comes to how the career of Shedeur Sanders is going to play out, because I refuse to believe that the prodigal son of Dillon Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, the guy who was the most accurate quarterback in college football in 2024, who turned around Jackson State in Colorado, who has the genes of Dillon Sanders, one of the greatest athletes ever, is not going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. But right now, the current situation that he's in doesn't look like he's going to be getting an opportunity to start anytime soon. And it's unfortunate because, if he just would have conformed, maybe the Baltimore Ravens right now would have been the open door that Shedeur Sanders needed to walk through to position himself to eventually be a starting quarterback. Because if Shedeur Sanders would have wanted to get drafted by the Ravens, Lamar gets injured, he steps in, he balls out with the good supporting cast that he has around him. Teams that are in need of a quarterback, you know what they think? They say, you know what, this is a weak quarterback class that we have coming up in 2026. How about we call up the Browns and we offer them a third or fourth round pick and we get Shedeur Sanders and have him come in and compete for the starting job? That's how the NFL works. But the hindsight isn't there for a lot of people when it comes to this situation. If you don't want the starting quarterback for your favorite football team to play like Anthony Richardson, give JT Sports a 5-star review. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, JT Sports is available. The links are down in the description and pinned comment below. Unlike everybody else in the national media, we actually are going to talk about Dillon Gabriel and not make him, being the Browns' new starting quarterback, all about Shedeur Sanders. So what exactly are the Browns getting out of Dillon Gabriel as he makes his NFL debut officially against the Minnesota Vikings, who is probably the last defense that any rookie quarterback would want to make their first start against? Brian Flores, he sends a lot of pressure, throws a lot of exotic blitz looks at you. So this is going to be a debut that's going to show us a lot about how good Dillon Gabriel is right away. And the thing about Dillon Gabriel getting drafted along with Shedeur Sanders is the Browns put unnecessary pressure on Dillon Gabriel, because now with Shedeur Sanders, every incompletion that Dillon Gabriel throws, every interception, every misread, every bad decision that he makes is going to be magnified and is going to be critiqued. And if he ends up struggling, how long is the leash that the Browns have with Dillon Gabriel until they're willing to start Shedeur Sanders? Maybe you have to say 10 weeks, because if they bench Dillon Gabriel and they start Shedeur Sanders, that's them waving the white flag that they made the wrong decision to draft Dillon Gabriel where they did. And if Shedeur ends up being a better player, then everything that was talked about when it came to Shedeur Sanders' character, his draft fall, is going to be questioned. But what nobody is bringing up and what nobody wants to ask is, what happens if Dillon Gabriel is actually good? Shedeur Sanders may not ever touch the field if that happens, because Shedeur Sanders' opportunity lies with Dillon Gabriel playing awful. So Shedeur Sanders fans are actively rooting for Dillon Gabriel to fail. And that's why the Browns are the most idiotic franchise in the history of sports. I don't have an issue with the Browns double dipping that quarterback in the draft. You've poorly drafted this position since the beginning of time. That number 2 Browns jersey with all the quarterback names on the back of it, they need to add 2 more to that thing. So if you draft 2 quarterbacks, there's nothing wrong with that. The Redskins took both RG3 and Kirk Cousins, and it worked out well for them. But in this situation, though, where they went wrong is that they drafted Dillon Gabriel, and they also drafted a Hollywood quarterback that brings a massive cult behind them. And they don't really care about Dillon Gabriel's feelings. They don't care that he's a human. All they care about is Shedeur Sanders getting his opportunity at Dillon Gabriel's expense, and they're rooting on his downfall. Shedeur Sanders fans put more pressure on Dillon Gabriel, because now if he ends up struggling, and let's say this is a home game in Cleveland, the crowd starts chanting for Shedeur, Dillon Gabriel is going to lose a lot of confidence. It's hard to play free when you have another rookie quarterback that has this huge following breathing down your throat, and it's just waiting for your demise so he can take advantage of it. One man's misfortune is another man's opportunity in the NFL. And if Dillon Gabriel ends up being bad, then it's going to be the opportunity that maybe Shedeur Sanders takes advantage of. But if Dillon Gabriel is good, then we close the door on all of this Shedeur Sanders is getting sabotage talk. Because at the end of the day, the NFL is a business. Nobody has time to be racist. People are trying to win games. And the NFL is more professional than I think about the majority of other sports leagues out there of how they conduct business. They don't have to rig things for ratings. Nobody is going up against Shedeur Sanders. They see who Shedeur Sanders is right now, and there's nothing wrong with Shedeur Sanders taking this year to redshirt and to be on the practice squad. Everybody complains how the NFL doesn't develop quarterbacks anymore, but the Browns are trying to develop Shedeur Sanders by allowing him to run the scout team for his first season. Everybody says how rookie quarterbacks need to sit for a year. They need to sit, learn the system, and then start the next season. But the Browns are doing that with Shedeur, but yet they're sabotaging him, though. 92% of the players in the NFL care more about getting money than they care about getting a ring. Most of these NFL players don't lose sleep at night after their careers are over, knowing that they retired without a ring. They could care less about it. It's like you want to get as much money as possible and get as much generational wealth that you can obtain while you can play this game for such a short amount of time. And very often, not only do these players care about money more than they care about winning championships, but they also care about numbers. They also care about being the guy who is the most responsible for the team's success. It's called ego. And to win the Super Bowl, to be a championship contender, everybody has to be able to put their ego aside for the betterment of the team. A.J. Brown can't do that. A.J. Brown isn't willing to sacrifice taking a back seat in order for the Philadelphia Eagles to win. It's unrealistic for A.J. Brown to get 9-10 targets every single game with the amount of good players that the Eagles have on that squad. They have too many mouths to feed to appease A.J. Brown's demands. The Eagles need to sit A.J. Brown down and give him this ultimatum. Either you're willing to sacrifice and take a back seat and wait your turn and perform when your number is called, or we trade you to the Carolina Panthers, the New York Jets, and whoever else is one of the bottom feeders in the NFL right now. So you can put up all the great numbers in the world that you want to, get all the targets that your heart desires, but you can become a loser in the process. Because what A.J. Brown has is a loser's mentality that somehow happens to be on a Super Bowl team. And eventually, the Eagles are going to have to part ways with A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts is not a bad quarterback, but A.J. Brown's lack of production is making the media come after Jalen Hurts. Devontae Smith has been pretty good. Dallas Goedert looks pretty good. But yet, due to A.J. Brown's lack of success, and how vocal he's been with his displeasures with the passing game over the past 2 years, I don't care what these players try to say to make it seem like the media was overblowing a situation. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And this is the second situation that A.J. Brown has had where he's been dissatisfied with his role in the offense and he's gone to social media with it. It's time for the Philadelphia Eagles to put their foot down with A.J. Brown and ask him, are you all in on winning championships, or are you all in on your ego and your numbers and your statistics? You need to pick one, because if you want to, we can trade you to somebody else and you can get what you desire. And if you don't want to be a champion, then we'll make that happen. But if you still want to continue to win, then you have to be okay with maybe having a few games when you finish with 3 receptions and only 23 yards. Because at the end of the day, with the amount of high-level players that the Eagles have, there's going to be games when A.J. Brown goes off and some games when Dallas Goedert, Saquon, or Devontae Smith goes off. Everybody can't eat their cake and have it too. I don't see Devontae Smith going to social media and being vocal when he doesn't get targeted. One team, one goal. You can't win championships with players that have a me-first attitude. If you win the game, who cares about your stats? Now, it's one thing to be frustrated if you're losing. Okay, yeah, I want to be able to make a play because maybe I could have made a play if I got a few more opportunities thrown my way that could have changed the game and maybe we could have won. But that's not the case. The Eagles are undefeated. And yet that's not enough for A.J. Brown unless he's the star, unless he's the reason for why the Eagles are 4-0. And that's why it would be in the Eagles' best interest to trade him. He's not a championship caliber player. Championship caliber players have to be willing to sacrifice. Chris Bosh was an absolute dog when he was in Toronto. And he was willing to be the third option behind Dwayne Wade and LeBron James in order to win a championship. That's what it is. That's what it takes to be a championship caliber player in this league. You see, every time you have a guy that starts to exit their prime, then they want to start to chase the ring, like DeAndre Hopkins. Why is that? Because the players care more about going to a situation that allows them to thrive and have success and get paid a lot of money than taking less, not having a lot of production, and winning championships. Because it's hard to take a back seat, even when you're winning. It's just the emotions that comes with playing the receiver position, but certain guys make it harder on others that have success when they constantly are bitching about how many targets they're not getting, why they're not getting more plays dialed up their way. And eventually, it causes turmoil in the locker room. And Jalen Hurts is a stoic person. Like, you can snap on him and he's not even going to bat an eye at you. And he's going to continue to play the same way as he should. He's playing winning football. The Eagles are winning. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They don't need to force feed A.J. Brown the ball at the expense of Jalen Hurts committing more turnovers to appease him and hurting the team in the process. A.J. Brown is the perfect example of why players chase money instead of rings, because they aren't willing to put their ego aside to occasionally be a third option on a stacked team. If you ever get bored during the middle of the day and you're trying to talk some football, join the JT Sports Discord server, man. Link is down in description and pinned comment below. We're trying to talk some ball with you, man. We want to hear from you. Go ahead and join the JT Sports Discord server. All the links are in the description and pinned comment section below. Now, on the last week of July, John Harbaugh was on the Ravens podcast, and they asked him about what was his thoughts about people saying that it's Super Bowl or bust for the Ravens this year. And he said that anybody who said it was Super Bowl or bust for this team this year never accomplished anything in their life, right? And there's a process to winning. Now, John Harbaugh had a fair point when he said there's a process to winning, but the process that John Harbaugh has used to go about winning another Super Bowl in Baltimore hasn't worked. And you have the most talented quarterback to ever put his hands on the football, and yet he doesn't have a Lombardi. He has 2 MVPs. He's a 3-time first-team All-Pro, the only quarterback in NFL history with these accolades, but yet somehow he doesn't have that Lombardi trophy in his hardware case. And coaches coach and players make plays. Lamar Jackson has had his fair share of mistakes in the playoffs, but at the same time, John Harbaugh has also had a lot of blunders in the playoffs as well. And let's not forget that John Harbaugh was on the verge of losing his job before Lamar Jackson came and saved it. And Lamar Jackson, ever since his rookie season, has been carrying John Harbaugh. And when Lamar came and saved John Harbaugh's job, that pretty much was the writing on the wall, what this relationship was going to be if Lamar Jackson reached his ceiling and developed. John Harbaugh has gotten complacent due to how much Lamar Jackson has ascended in his development. Now John Harbaugh feels like it's okay to throw his offensive coordinator under the bus, even though the offense isn't a problem, but have all the faith in the world in the defensive coordinator that obviously is in over his head with a defense that coming into this season looked like it was going to be one of the best in the history of the NFL. If you would have told me that a defense that had Jair Alexander, Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, 3 All-Pros on it was going to be giving up nearly 30 points per game, I would have told you that you were out of your freaking mind. Well, the Ravens are out of their freaking mind if John Harbaugh is going to be allowed to throw Todd Monken under the bus, the guy who elevated Lamar Jackson's game to an all-time great level, but yet have all the faith in the world in the guy that's currently coaching the most underperforming defense in the NFL. You see, when you start throwing coaches on the bus, that's the sign that you start to feel that pressure. That heat is starting to get a little bit too much for you. It's starting to make it uncomfortable to sit down for a long period of time. And John Harbaugh has been coaching the Ravens for a very long time. He's tied with Mike Tomlin for being the longest tenured coach in the NFL. And the longer that you stay with a franchise and no progress is made, you don't get back to the Super Bowl, then fans start to get anxious, especially when you have an elite quarterback. An elite quarterback makes the expectations even higher. So when John Harbaugh a few months ago came out and said that we were losers for saying that it was Super Bowl or bust for the Ravens this year, that was him speaking in fear. Because he knows what this season means. If the Ravens miss the playoffs this year, which very well can happen, and let's say they go 8-9, they go 7-10, that's the perfect opportunity for them to part ways with John Harbaugh, because that's too big of regression to ignore. Derrick Henry is a shell of himself. Yeah, you got a bunch of injuries, but I mean, the Steelers have made it to the playoffs for the past 2 years with below average teams due to the greatness of Mike Tomlin being able to some way, somehow always win 10 games or more with whatever team he puts on the field. Mike Tomlin, if you would have given him somebody like Lamar Jackson, maybe he already has another Super Bowl. Maybe the Steelers have the most Super Bowls in the NFL. John Harbaugh right now, it's gut check time for him. He's 1-3, got injuries galore. You got to pull a Mike Tomlin. You got the Houston Texans coming up and the Rams next week. Then you have a bye. You got to win one of these games, man. You're a good coach. At least you're perceived to be a good coach. What are you when your team is depleted, when the morale is down, when it feels like what was supposed to be the year that you finally broke through again is not is now starting to slip through your fingers. I predict that the Ravens will miss the playoffs this year and that John Harbaugh is going to get fired. This team just is unraveling, and they're unraveling fast. What the hell has happened to Derrick Henry? Last season, Derrick Henry only had one game when he rushed for under 50 yards. This season, ever since that week 1 game against the Buffalo Bills, he's had 3 straight games when he's been under 50 yards rushing. He's getting 12 carries per game. He was getting 20 carries per contest last season. If the offensive line is struggling to protect the quarterback, why not run the football more? You see, yes, Todd Monken is responsible for the play calling, but when it comes to 3rd down, 4th down, John Harbaugh knows what's being called. He has a say in what's being called. So for him to throw his coaches under the bus with the amount of injuries that the Ravens have, with their slow start to this season, the pressure's magnified. John Harbaugh feels that, and it's getting too much for him. Bryce Young makes the Carolina Panthers unwatchable. The only way that you can watch Bryce Young play 4 quarters of football is if you're either drunk or you're high. Bryce Young is one of the worst first-round picks in the history of the NFL. He's one of the worst quarterbacks statistically that this league has ever seen. He's 29th in adjusted QBR. He's 29th in passer rating. He's 27th in completion percentage, despite the Carolina Panthers getting him 2 receivers that he requested. They get for him. Ted McMillan is frustrated with Bryce Young. He's overthrowing him in the middle of the field. He's throwing balls, skipping balls at his feet. Ted McMillan is ready for Andy Dalton to start and replace Bryce Young, because Bryce Young is holding back Ted McMillan. Imagine how good Ted McMillan would be right now if he had somebody like Lamar or Patrick Mahomes throwing him the football. He could easily be leading the NFL in receiving yards right now. But with how bad Bryce Young is, Ted McMillan, he's only regulated to getting these 5 and 10-yard slants, this, because Bryce Young has a noodle arm. The Carolina Panthers are not compromising Bryce Young. They drafted 2 receivers that he wanted them to draft for him, Ted McMillan and Xavier Legette, and he's not good enough to get them the football. We saw Andy Dalton last year come out and light up the Las Vegas Raiders. And then Bryce Young comes in after, and, he has a little bit of some flashes in the pan that give you a little encouragement to give him another season to see if he finally has put it all together. But it looks like Bryce Young's little miracle run or Cinderella run after he got benched last year was nothing more than that. Because now we have all the evidence of what Bryce Young is, and that's one of the worst starting quarterbacks in NFL history. He is not good. Eventually, you can only blame so many things until you have to just accept that Bryce Young just doesn't have what it takes to be a good quarterback in the NFL. The only team that Bryce Young plays good against is the Atlanta Falcons. For some reason, the Atlanta Falcons always bring the best out of Bryce Young. That's Bryce Young's Super Bowl. Hell, if the Carolina Panthers played the Atlanta Falcons every week, Bryce Young would be the best quarterback in the NFL. But when he plays everybody else, he's not good. And I've defended Bryce Young for a very long time, and I'm done. He's just not good. You got to get drunk or high to watch him play. With the amount of money that the Panthers have put into the offensive line, that they put into the receivers, Bryce Young should be much better than what he is. When you are a first overall pick, you're supposed to be a franchise changer. They don't just give you that label for nothing. You're supposed to be able to elevate a team that has certain limitations. Cam Newton is the prime example of what an ideal number 1 overall pick is supposed to be able to do going to a bad organization. They're supposed to be able to carry a team like how Cam Newton did in 2015 with Ted Ginn being his best receiver, and he won MVP. In spite of having limitations around him, not having the best receiving core, not always having the best supporting cast, but he was able to elevate that due to how good he was at his peak. Same thing with Andrew Luck. Same thing with Joe Burrow. Bryce Young doesn't have any of those qualities. Bryce Young needs this. Bryce Young needs that. Bryce Young just needs to go away from the Carolina Panthers. They just need to go ahead, fire everybody, and start over again. This is one of the worst draft picks in NFL history when you think about what the Panthers mortgaged to get Bryce Young. They essentially gave up Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore with a ton of other assets to get one of the biggest busts of all time. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm shocked that Bryce Young is as bad as what he is. When he was playing at Alabama, he carried those Alabama teams. A lot of people think that just because you're playing for a team that's a big national brand, you automatically were in a great situation. When Bryce Young left for the NFL, Nick Saban cleaned house with his entire coaching staff because he said that they were too Bryce Young dependent. The Bryce Young that we saw at Alabama is not the Bryce Young that made its way to the NFL. And maybe that's because he's just too short to play the position. But whatever it is, he just doesn't have it. He already is limited in himself. He has to overcome the limitation of being a midget quarterback. And now you're asking him to overcome the dysfunctional Carolina Panthers? Panthers fans, just mail it in on Bryce Young. It's okay to admit that the brother just can't play. He's the worst quarterback in recent history as far as draft picks go. Johnny Manziel was better than Bryce Young. Bryce Young, the size, the limited arm strength, the limited athleticism, it's just too many obstacles that Bryce Young has physically to ever become a good quarterback in the NFL. At his best, he's a smaller version of Tua. If you ever get bored during the middle of the day and you're trying to talk some football, join the JT Sports Discord server, man. Link is down in description and pinned comment below. We're trying to talk some ball with you, man. We want to hear from you. Go ahead and join the JT Sports Discord server. All the links are in the description and pinned comment section below. For 2 straight seasons, Mike Tomlin has made it to the playoffs with backup quarterbacks, Russell Wilson and Mason Rudolph. So with Joe Burrow going down, why is it that Zach Taylor has been unable to still keep the Bengals in playoff contention? Oh, I got the answer for you. It's simple. He's riding the coattails of Joe Burrow. He's benefiting off having a great quarterback. When Joe Burrow was snapping on Zach Taylor last season in spite of beating the Tennessee Titans because he was frustrated with all of the mental mistakes, the defense not being able to get a stop. You know what Zach Taylor said? Hey, bro, you need to congratulate our defense because at least they did enough to give us the win. When Joe Burrow was just frustrated about how the season went entirely, he was told to be okay with mediocrity when he was just playing in the Super Bowl 3 years ago. And now he has to be told to be okay with going 9-8, getting out to a slow start, having to carry the team and lose games. This isn't the only confrontation that Zach Taylor has had with a star player. Zach Taylor has had confrontations with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase was getting on his ass during their Monday night beatdown against the Denver Broncos. These 2 confrontations obviously show that Zach Taylor has lost the Cincinnati Bengals locker room. He lost his locker room last year after Joe Burrow ripped them to him for their performance against the Titans. And with Jamar Chase coming at him on the sidelines the way that he did, it's pretty clear that this team is no longer bought in to Zach Taylor because this team was Joe Burrow's team. And now that the heart and soul is gone, the rest of the team has no confidence. They know what it is with Jake Browning. Jake Browning may get them 3-4 more wins if Joe Burrow can't play this year. Zach Taylor was never really that good of a coach, but he was fortunate enough that he was able to have a team that had a good enough defense during Lou Anarumo's peak that they were able to get some big stops against the Kansas City Chiefs, the Las Vegas Raiders. But eventually, they lost that Super Bowl because coaching. And when you have an average, above average coach going up against an all-time great, they get exposed. And now you see what has happened to the Bengals with Joe Burrow being gone now. If Mike Tomlin can make it to the playoffs with Russell Wilson, who just got replaced by a rookie quarterback for the second time in his career now, and Mason Rudolph, why can't Zach Taylor do the same with Jake Browning, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins? He's supposed to be an offensive-minded coach, but yet somehow he still can't find a way to get any juice out of this offense with Joe Burrow being gone. Yeah, the Bengals have a bad offensive line, but I mean, that's on the general manager. And it's also on Zach Taylor to find a way to overcome having a bad offensive line and still win. Andy Reid could probably win a few games without Patrick Mahomes. I'm pretty sure he could find a way to still be above 500 if Mahomes had to go down for a few games or a month or two. It's all about surviving for Cincinnati, and Cincinnati can't survive. Right now, they're sinking, and they are getting eaten up alive. When this season ends, the Bengals, not only are they going to have to clean house with Zach Taylor, but they got to clean house with their entire organization. And they're going to have a serious conversation about just how committed they are to maintaining Joe Burrow's long-term health And how committed are they to getting the most out of the prime years that Joe Burrow has left because he could end up very well going out like Andrew Luck. The coaching doesn't do him any favors when we see how this team has looked ever since he's been gone. They've only put up 13 points in the 2 games that Jake Browning has started in replace of Joe Burrow, and they're not looking for a replacement. Maybe they're just looking for the tank. Maybe they're just fed up with Zach Taylor and they're just, you know what? No, you just make do with what you have. The writing is on the wall for Zach Taylor and it's on the wall for Cincinnati, but we kind of already knew this. But with these 2 confrontations with the 2 best players on your team, not a good look.